Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Rental Regrets. As always, I am your host, Victor Nubb, and today we are looking at Rampage, developed by Bally Midway and published by a whole slew of different companies, depending on the platform that it was released on. We'll go ahead and name all of them off, but we are, of course, looking at the NES version of the game today. Bally Midway published the game for arcades, which is where it initially was released. Sega was the publisher on the Sega Master System. Data East published it on the NES. The Atari Corporation published it on the Atari Lynx, and Activision has published all other versions of the game, which there were probably, I don't know, a half dozen other companies or consoles that it ended up releasing on this. Saw a very wide release when it initially came out, and it was released in the United States initially on arcade or in arcades on July 3rd of 1986, and the NES version that we're looking at today in 1988. So this is one of those games where I may not have ever actually rented it, but I have a distinct memory of playing the game at a friend's house, which we'll get into once we get the game started here. Let's go ahead and select. I'm going to pick Lizzie. I don't think it really matters which one you select. Radioactive Lake changes woman's scale. Okay. It says there's 128 days of destruction. It turns out there are 768 levels in total in the game because you can loop the entire set of maps, I think, 5 times or 6 times, something like that. So your ostensible goal, if I can get that word out, is to just destroy all the buildings in a map and stay alive as long as possible. And obviously, as a giant monster like Godzilla or King Kong, which is what those were supposed to be references to, your objective is simplified or made much easier by eating people and food of any kind, and I think money can actually give you health back. I'm not 100% on that. Hurrah! Why are there so many people with guns in the buildings? I don't know, because it looks like they're all military people as well. So one of the dumber things about this game is the fact that they... you blew up your own building, idiots. I already lost track of what I was trying to say. You can avoid damage by jumping off of buildings before they collapse. If you don't jump off of the building and you just kind of fall, the game actually says that you took damage as a result of that. Very strange. Gotcha. Oh. Eat the little man. Alright, so, the first time I ever played this game was at a friend's house, and this was someone that I met in the 6th grade. I think we had a class together at some point, and I was invited over to hang out at his house, I believe, for his birthday, and this was in 6th grade. And he, one of the things that, as a kid and a big fan of video games, one of the things I always wanted to do whenever I went over to a new friend's house was look at some of their old video games, or at that time, I guess they would have been current video games, and see which ones they had and which ones are cool, and check out the ones I'd never heard of. And I think this is one of the first ones that we played during his birthday, because I'd never heard of it, and he was very much a fan of this particular video game, so we checked it out. And I loved it at the time. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. You were Godzilla or King Kong and walking around and destroying buildings and eating little people. It was a novel concept by comparison to most video games where you're just a normal-sized human being, as odd as that sounds, and you're usually fighting the monster as opposed to being the monster and then trying to destroy all the people. Come on. I believe there was one other game we looked at that day in particular that sticks out at top of mind that we will almost certainly look at in a future episode of Rental Regrets, which was DuckTales. And I like to say that this friend was kind of my, for lack of a better term, gateway drug into like 80s or early 90s action films, and more specifically the ones that there was no way I would have been permitted to watch at the age of 10 or 11. He was an interesting kid in that regard because his family was very religious, extremely religious, in fact. But for some reason, they allowed their son of, 10, 11 years old to get a skater kid haircut, shaved on the sides, long on top, to watch these horribly violent action films. I think the night that we were over there, we watched RoboCop. At age 10, and this wasn't like a made-for-TV edit where they took all the really violent stuff out. And I think there might be some nudity in that film. I'm not 100% certain. And I had never seen that movie before. I think at a future hangout, we watched Terminator 2. I had never even seen Terminator 1. I was one of those weird kids that actually saw Terminator 2 before Terminator 1 because Terminator 1, I don't know if it ever had the following that the second film got initially. I mean, obviously, someone cared enough to make a sequel at some point, but, I mean, I've seen Terminator 2 probably, 30 times, 40 times in my life, and I could probably count on one hand the number of times I've seen Terminator 1. But I always found it interesting that he was permitted to do all these things with a family that was so religious, and I'm not joking when I say this. They actually moved out of the community that I lived in when I was a kid so that they could build a house near the church that they wanted to start attending, and it was a brand new church. So they decided to not only move closer to this church, but also, since there were no adequate houses where they were going to move, they decided to just go ahead and build the house themselves out in the woods, bought a piece of land and started building the house. And shortly after they made that move, not only did I kind of not remain friends with him anymore because of the distance I would have to go to continue hanging out with him, but also I found out the hard way that either I had an extreme allergic reaction to sawdust, or it was possibly the fact that they had something like 14 cats, and before they had moved to this house, this new house that they were building, I don't know if they ever had any cats, and every time I would go over there, I would basically have to take Benadryl with me, and I would just be a stuffed up mess the entire time that I was there. So yeah, that friendship didn't last much longer after that. But I still have some fond memories. This is one of those where, he introduced me to a game that to this day I still have fond memories of, even though I think it's probably not going to be what you would typically score very high. Hooray! I broke California by punching it. Hint, if you watch what you eat, you might live longer or something like that. I think we talked about my appreciation for Godzilla as a character in the very first episode of Rental Regrets we ever did. I was always a big fan of that character when I was younger. And I know I haven't seen all of the Godzilla films, but I've seen enough to know that, for the hour and a half or 2 hour runtime of each of the movies, and all of maybe 11 minutes each time, 10 minutes of screen time for Godzilla, that's all I really needed to really love the idea of, a giant lizard that goes around and destroys Tokyo initially, and then whatever monsters she would be basically resurrected to fight in the name of humanity, which is always a weird idea because initially Godzilla was supposed to be a kind of an analogy, or whatever the word I'm looking for. She was supposed to represent the idea of nuclear experimentation gone wrong. Come on. There we go. Kind of Japan's artistic coming to terms with the fact that they were the first and, well, at least today, the only country that had ever been attacked with an atomic weapon or a nuclear weapon. Well, I guess the atomic bombs weren't technically nuclear. Nuclear is like a far more condensed version of the materials used for atomic weapons, if I'm not mistaken. Whee! Oh, cool. I didn't know you could do that. Alright, there's a guy sticking his head out of the sewer there. That was weird. Now, there have been other versions of this game released. We will probably look at least one of those other versions at a later date, because I do own the N64. Well, I don't know if it was exclusive to N64, but that's the version I have. The version that came out on N64, I believe it was called World Tour or something of that nature. I would say between the two games, I think I remember that one a little more fondly, but doesn't mean I don't appreciate this game for what it is. And it's not the most complex game. It's literally just break buildings and don't die. Eat the little man! I got him. Also, they really did not put a ton of effort into the music for this game. This is the only other song we've heard at this point. Oh, a hamburger! I think. Yep, that was a hamburger. Okay, jump off. Oh, that was it? Okay. But they really don't give you enough time to read those headlines. Mutant spouse files legal action? Okay. I recall in the N64 version or World Tour, there was more of a story to the game that could actually be followed. This one, it seems like it's maybe just a couple of quick quips about mutations or monsters or mutants or anything, and that's it. Now, of course, this is one of those properties that, for some reason, someone decided it would make a perfect action film starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which came out, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and was so popular, I think it barely made its money back. Video games just don't make good movies. They just don't. People keep trying. They still haven't found the secret sauce to make it work. Who knows, maybe Super Mario is going to do it. Well, I say that, but I think the Sonic movies have proved popular enough that they've already made 2 and they're getting ready to make a 3rd one, so I guess that would be the first real success story for a video game-based movie. By and large, though, they're just not good. Even the ones that people legitimately say are good, I think they tend to exaggerate the quality of the finished product. I'm sure Sonic is fine, but I don't know if it's one of those stories that they needed to examine in 3 movies. 1 probably would have been fine. What? I just got blown through the side of the screen. Eat the lady. I think you could eat the... Why aren't you picking up the money? There we go. Eat the hamburger. Alright, you're not getting me again. Yes, you are. You're getting me again. Damn, that hit hard. Ooh! I need you to not kill me. There we go. Oh, no, you don't. Eat this little guy. No, eat him! Smashy, smashy. Your ad here. Ha ha ha. So I wish I could say there was a lot more depth to the game than what we're seeing here, but there really isn't. So this is one of those games where the singular premise behind it is expected to be enough to get people to play the game or pay for the game and not be upset when it turns out there's not a whole lot else to it. Whee! Alright, I think we'll go through one or two more cities and then we'll probably be able to call it there because, yeah, we've seen basically everything that we have to see in this one. Whee! Oh, come on. Now this is a two-player game. I looked at it solo this time. I think when we do the episode for World Tour, I'll see if I can't drag a friend or two in to take a look at it. I believe World Tour is a 3-player experience, unless I'm misremembering. Because they give you a third option. In the original game, your options were to play as Lizzie the Lizard or George the Ape, and I think there was a rat in the World Tour games called Ralph. I may be misremembering. That's not Arizona. That's Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. That was a lot of ground to cover. Whee! Yummy. Like Nori's finding all this giant food! Excuse me, she. Ah, gotcha. Yum, 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 yum. Wow, that took a ton of health and I barely fell. Maybe 3 stories for a giant lizard. That's ridiculous. Now it does appear, and this is probably going to go in the good category for the rating in this game, if we were doing that. Obviously it's Rental Regrets, so I just offer final thoughts here. That there is an unlimited number of continues. So you can play until you, in theory, go through every single city in the United States. And then once you reach the 128 of them, you go back through the country a second, third, fourth, fifth time. But yeah, it doesn't appear that they gate you from progression if you die. Because all I'm doing is I'm just walking a couple steps and then mashing the attack button to regain my life. Whoa! Jump. I made an interesting choice there where if you do press the jump button, you can't jump straight up. You have to jump at an angle there. Or he kind of jumps and then arcs in the sky a little bit. Like that. Oh, no, you don't. Get out of here. Yum. Ah, you missed. Seriously, where are all these people coming from with these sticks of dynamite in the buildings? They can't all be military. More importantly, how many banks are there in the world that have that many floors in them? Especially in wherever of this country. They're at middle of nowhere. Let's see, the next city is Denver. They're in Colorado. Are there really a bunch of 8, 9, 10-story banks in Colorado? Oh, there's a train track. Oh, that means there's a train I can smash. I'm gonna smash it good. It's gonna be the slowest moving train in world history when it shows up, I bet. I'm tiny. And now I'm big again. Yeah, well, it looks like there's no limit on how many times I can continue. Just continue until I get bored and quit. Where's the train? Oh. I wanted to smash a train. Alright, one more level and then we'll call it. Hopefully I'll see a train this time. I like to think that was just a cowboy. There we go, there's the train. Hey, wait! No, I wanted to smash you! Aww. Apparently just punching it makes him gently turn around. Actually, I think we left a couple of people back at the last station. We're gonna go back and... Oh! Oh, I know the poison's bad. Don't eat the poison. Drink the alcohol, though. Toast! So there is a difference between the good items that you can pick up and the bad items. The good items are food and money, and then the bad items are like electronics and explosives, or anything that looks like poison. Ow! Jerk. No, you don't! Finish the last level without dying! Gotcha. Owie! I want to eat this person! Alright. Okay, I think that's a good enough look at this game to offer some final opinions on it. I think it's a very simple premise, which works in its favor, but also against it. Let's see if I can pause here. There we go. You're a big monster, like, you know, Godzilla, King Kong, one of the, what they would, I guess, in modern day call kaiju. Big monsters basically go around smashing cities and terrorizing humanity. And your objective in each level is just smash the buildings, destroy them, and get out. I think one of the strong points of the game is that kind of inversion of the typical gameplay where you're the hero and trying to save people or humanity or whatever, and instead you're the bad guy. And boy, they didn't have a ton of games that were like that on the NES, not that I can think of. I'd have to look through all the ones that I still have copies of. I don't know if you're ever the bad guy in any of those games. So this is, or at least when I was a kid, this was a refreshing change of pace from the typical fare you got in video games. And any chance to play basically a Godzilla or King Kong-like monster is a plus in my book. It's a nice touch that there is, from what I could tell, unlimited continues. It's possible that there aren't. I did notice earlier, either it was during testing or maybe during the gameplay today, that even if you let your character walk off screen, the game still gives you a chance to continue. But all I really needed to do to get back up and start fighting again was just mash one of the keys before my character model left the screen, and I not only got back up with full health, but I kept my score. So in theory, beating, quote unquote, beating the game, which is not possible technically, would be as simple as just not quitting even though you die. Even though there are 768 levels in total, which is just the game, the 128 days looped a couple of times, technically there is no end. You just smash as many cities as you feel like you've got your fill of, and then turn it off, basically. That would probably go in the bad if we were doing the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's just there really isn't an end to the game. There's a lot of fun in terrorizing humanity in a video game, but there wasn't really much purpose beyond that. You just walk around and break buildings. It would have been nice if there were like other monsters or like a boss level where you fought against, the military, if they came up with like a big bad tank or an airplane, the really big airplane that you could smash, or maybe robot versions of yourself that you had to kind of duke it out with. But they didn't add any of that from what I could tell from the game I've played. It was simplistic to a fault. There is some measure of joy to be had from just doing, the building smashing, but it would have been nice if there was a little bit more to the game. Maybe a way to actually conclude it. Now, this was obviously released in arcades first, so I imagine part of that design hook is have the fun beating up buildings and smashing little cars and tanks and helicopters and whatnot. Constantly getting shot, eventually dying, and then, even though you can continue on the console version of the game, in the arcade, I imagine if you died, you would have had to feed another quarter in the machine to continue. And that was kind of the way to get you to feed more money in there. The music is terrible. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They put absolutely no effort into the music. I feel like I could have banged out one of these tunes just in an afternoon. And I put together a little simplistic hooks to put over the title card for my Nubs collection episodes. And usually those have a little bit more thought put into them than the main song you hear the overwhelming majority of the time in this game, which is just do 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 do. Hey, come on. Did they actually hire anyone to do sound for this game, or did they had an intern who wasn't getting paid and they were like, "Hey kid, we got to ship this game next week. Can you come up with this song?" "Can I?" And then he put the song together and someone was like, "No, seriously, can you put together a song?" That was terrible. That was really bad. Yeah, it would have been nice if they had put a little more effort in that. The graphics are okay. Obviously, this wasn't made with the NES in mind, or the graphical capabilities of the NES in mind. It was probably designed for a console that maybe didn't have the same fidelity or graphical prowess that the NES had at the time. So it is what it is. It's not the worst looking game that we have looked at or possibly will look at. There's still some games left on the NES that I need to look at, although we are getting close to the end of my catalog of NES games. But yeah, it's nothing special. And they do the same thing that a lot of devs do with some of these levels, where the background's just black, so they didn't have to animate the background or use color that may have been tied to something else, which is disappointing. It's always nice to have at least some detail in the background, but whatever, it looks fine. As far as my regret for this game, I would not have been terribly upset if I had got this as a kid. Looking at it today, I think I probably would have gotten bored with it eventually and been like, yeah, this isn't as good as I thought it would have been. Yeah, the loop does not benefit with time. This isn't one of those games where, 10 years after it came out, 20 years after it came out, you're still loving the loop of smashing buildings and eating people with absolutely no progress made of any meaning. You're destroying states or cities or whatever, and it's showing you kind of on a crude map of the U.S., but what does any of it mean? You get through all of it, and then the game just kind of makes you go back through the cities and smash them again. There really wasn't a point to doing it after you went through everything once. But yeah, I think as a kid I would have liked getting it. As an adult, And I don't typically reveal how much you pay for some of these games today, but I'll go ahead and say this one. This was on the expensive side for a used NES cart. This was about $30. Yeah, it has not aged as well as my memory of it has. So yeah, I would say today, yeah, probably regret picking it up. Would have been a better deal if it was only like $10 or $15, but at $30, man, this is not a great pick. So that's going to do it for this look at Rampage and this episode of Rental Regrets. As always, I do appreciate each of you watching, and I will see you next time.